Hello, everybody. I feel really privileged to introduce you our next speaker, István Lengyel, who will be giving the keynote speech for closing this beautiful conference. So, István is the co-founder and the co-owner of Kilgray and director for customer success at On Global for a couple of months. So most of you in this room are company owners or leaders. Is it an easy and successful life? Is that what you've been always dreaming about? How do you cope with stress, high expectations, new challenges, responsibility? So if you're a leader, do you have the right to be weak sometimes, to be uncertain, or to make wrong decisions, or to contradict yourself? Have you ever had the feeling that you are just about to burn out? How did you react in a similar situation? And how would you feel if from one day to the next, you didn't have to go to work for anymore? And then what? You got up the next morning, and then what? Picture yourself in that position. How would you feel? Our keynote speaker has already experienced that specific morning, and he's about to share with us his feelings and experience with us. Please welcome to the stage my friend István.
Is the camera? Is the microphone working? Yes, thank you. Well, it was a melancholic feeling. The next day, I woke up and I wanted to change my mobile number. Ever in my life, I was having one mobile number, which was both my company and my personal mobile. And after like 16 years, I was changing this number. I go to a mall, and then there is a desk, a counter, where they are selling credit cards. And I realized I never had a credit card in my life. And now I'm leaving this company, I'm in a reasonably good financial situation. Maybe I should have a credit card. So many people have credit cards. So I go there, and then what happens is that they are asking you for your occupation. And I say, well, I was a CEO of a technology company, a shareholding company. And income, up to yesterday I had it. Now it's only the dividends. And they were so nice. I was having this impression that they were very, very nice, like trying to help me. And by cheating a little bit, it took me a couple of days to realize that they were doing it mostly for the commission. So it's quite hard not to be someone. It is quite hard when you are unsure about yourself, when you don't think that you are an expert in anything. And I think that many people in this room feel like that. Over the years, I have seen my big defeats and my little victories, and I grew less certain of my abilities. As a CEO, every single ability that I deemed to have was questioned, either by others or by myself. But I was waiting for this change. I promised myself when I was 25 that the time I am 35, I'm no longer CEO. We tried that. It didn't work out at that time. But now I managed after 2 years later. I wanted to quit work because what I was feeling is that it's completely filling my mind. I found my personality to be so work-focused, so boring compared to what it was before. Like, okay, talk about work-life balance. I mean, I cannot work in the evenings, that's okay, but I will still think about it. And this is what I wanted to get out from. The social life is different, though, when I'm 37 now. It's different now than it was like when I was 21. There are not so many circles that I can belong to, not so many people that would be interested in just getting to know each other without a reason. It's not the same thing now to say that I'm a nobody than it was like 12 years ago or 15 years ago. And what am I good at? What can I be passionate about? What can I grow and cherish now? Well, I looked into what I could do in the area of contemporary art trading. This is something that always interested me. I like artists because they are strange people with strange ways of expressing themselves, and I can relate to them. But I never felt to be an artist. I feel more like I'm a businessman, an economist or something, even if money is not my top concern. Art is a global phenomenon. This is what my thought was, that it's a global phenomenon, but what you see is that the top artists, they get traded internationally. But as soon as you get to the long tail, they're always national. And what I was thinking is that maybe I could just bring something to the table from this globalization experience that I was having. And maybe I could do something that gives the artists an access to a global scene, and the buyers access to global talent, removing at least some of the bias that we have. But I was not ready to jump into this. What I had to realize is that I had no contacts, I had no knowledge, and what I'm doing right now is I'm reading books for the time being. I'm trying to understand it a bit better, how it works, and probably it will take a year or two until I really get there, that I can do something over there. But I also find that growing chia seeds would be quite interesting in Europe. So what did I do? Well, I didn't have much to do, and I started doing some strategic consultancy with On Global, the company where I'm working now. An LSP, surprise, surprise, which had some difficulties growing to the next level. I think that it's not a unique problem. It was fun. I really enjoyed seeing the owners debate about the very basic topics like mission, vision, values, strategy, market, differentiation. But what did I do? I was just a facilitator. And how did I facilitate? I was copying pretty much those consultants who were working with me before. And was I sure that I'm taking them to the right direction? Of course I was not. I was just applying a set of tools that I saw somewhere. And what's the basis for this? What's the reality? I contributed, but I was not sure if I'm getting them to the right direction. And then I'm offered the job. Wow, what now? I mean, I was helping you, but now I need to really take part in the execution. It's frightening. I never worked at an LSP in my life, and there are so many. And it took me a while to think about it, but in the end, I took the offer. I mean, it's a challenge. It's something that you have to learn a lot from any new job, any new area. And the thing is that, okay, I know the translation industry, but those industries that we are serving, like, how much do you think I know about life sciences? Not too much. So I accept it, and I get to Spain. And I'm planning to work on my social life. It's actually a more social country, I'm telling you, than Hungary. But my Spanish is not on par with my English, and I feel somewhat ashamed. So I go there, and I talk to people, and everybody asks me there, like, whether I work there for a Spanish company. Do you know what I feel? Sometimes I feel like, okay, they must think that I'm this Central and Eastern European that comes in and takes the jobs in the West. It's quite awkward. But I want to build up a new identity. I don't want to just, live on the past achievements, but do something different, something else. And then I got this request to do this speech here, and it's amazing. I was getting really emotional. I mean, Paula Shannon, icon, goddess. Renato Beninato, icon. They were doing the keynotes in Seville and in New York. And when I was working at Kilgray, I attributed all the success that I had to the company. I was just one of the cogwheels there. And the other thing was that I was working for a technology company, and technology companies only get to speak when they pay for it. So I was coming here, but I don't have the feeling that I can give you the holy grail of how to manage a company, how to grow a business. I don't know that. Kilgray has always been a steadily growing company. There were times when it was growing very, very fast, and there were years of normal growth as well. But probably even the phenomenal growth was not as high as it could have been had we done everything fine in sales and marketing and these areas. Then there were also years when MemoQ was quite unique in the market, in my view, that there was no match. And of course, it's much easier to grow when you have something unique, a unique value proposition. And then there were also years when we did make a couple of bad decisions, when things were not going right. The company itself, however, was successful. There was a time when we made it to the Deloitte Fast 500, and we were the 178th fastest growing company in Europe and the Middle East. Wasn't it nice? But it has shaken up the market. I think that's the biggest achievement of Kilgray, with the collaborative translation and, interestingly, with changing customer service. But whether there was any point in my life that I could say that I was completely satisfied with everything, can't really tell. I remember that during my 12 years of being at Kilgray, there was only one Saturday afternoon when I thought that I did everything I could. I went out for a walk and I was feeling so amazingly happy because there was nothing else in my mind. That was in 2010. And originally, I was thinking that I would share some knowledge that I learned during my tenure at Kilgray. But you can read the Harvard Business Review or the INSEAD Knowledge magazine, which I highly recommend. They have some clashes, so they are not saying the same things. And they can probably give you much better advice about running a company. You will read a lot about companies like Uber, like Airbnb, Apple, Unilever, huge conglomerates that became these huge conglomerates over the years or over many years. But what I never get to hear, and this is probably interesting for others as well, is how Uber was organizing, let's say, the 50th taxi ride. What did they do? Did they start with a massive marketing campaign after recruiting a few key drivers in the location? Or did they just start putting energy and efforts into convincing people to work with them? How did they keep the interest of the taxi drivers in the beginning? And there's another thing about these companies. I don't know if you realize that, but as I was thinking about these companies, about 70% of the top IT companies are actually providing non-virtual services. So IT is just about facilitating, but they are doing something tangible. Just think about Amazon. Just think about eBay, Uber, Airbnb. I mean, you sleep there. It's not that you are using their portal. And for Kilgray, I can tell that the story was first rejection. We got huge rejection back in 2008-09, but then the interest of some people, and then getting to know those people who were bringing in some others, and then collaboration with these people, and then expansion collaboration. So this was how it went, and I think you can only do this with a good product, which has some interesting, novel aspects that can be put into words, into something that you can talk about. But then every day, you have the impression that what you are doing is the same as what others are doing. And that at a certain point, everybody is thinking about the same things. All the competitors came up with the same things, and it's very, very hard to differentiate. But it's nothing new. This is Robert K. Merton, who is the writer of the sociology of science. And he coined the term multiple discoveries, bringing many examples. For example, the discovery of calculus, the oxygen, and the evolution. They were all discovered by multiple people at the same time. So it's no wonder, actually, there are more so-called multiple discoveries than heroic discoveries, where one person made this huge discovery. So there is something in this esprit de temps. And inventions were also the same. Crossbow or magnetism were both invented at the same time in multiple areas of the world. And have you heard this year any presentation about crowdsourcing at the conference. And even transcreation is not such a hot topic anymore. But I have heard quite a lot about artificial intelligence. But Kilgray was not the first time when I was dreaming about success. When I left university and graduated as an economist and a translator, I already had some experience translating books. We built up the basic principles of collaborative team, group translation, as we used to call it. I'm talking about 2003-04. And I started my PhD in 2004. I wanted to belong to the academic community. By that time, I already published my first paper together with Kilgray co-founder Balázs at a conference in Madrid, and had some references as well. And I wanted to write about translational terminology, which, believe it or not, at that time, it didn't exist in any of the academic publications. It's basically a glossary, more or less. And I was imagining that clever young people would be exchanging ideas and listening to me at the universities, the same way that I was listening to some of my professors, actually very few of my professors, but that's the situation. And that I could turn my theory into something that becomes part of the official canon. And over the time, I realized that my threshold for rejection is lower than what you have to have in the academic community. And I also realized that I don't really like office politics, so I decided to go more into the industry. I finished my PhD in the end in 2014, but changed topic from the original topic because the new topic was easier. So my whole story made me think about what success is. I'm not a high net value individual. I did this impressive company, like I was part of it, but I attribute most of the success to others. Success for me, like personally, was more the acceptance, the love that I got at these conferences, the positive feedback. That's an amazing feeling. Success for me was when I finally could understand what the other party is talking about as their challenge. It was hearing some clever advice that I could apply to myself. I was interested to know what success is from a psychological perspective, so I did a little research preparing for this presentation. So let's start with psychology. What you see here is that success is progress, and progress is small victories. This is what psychology says. You see that you have to make small wins, concrete, complete, implemented outcomes of moderate importance. Once a small win has been accomplished, forces are set in motion that favor another small win. So there is a virtuous circle here, it seems. And what you need to do with your employees is basically giving them the opportunity to experience these small successes, these tiny wins. But there's also a danger in being too successful, growing too big. That sets the bar higher. Just think about Buzz Aldrin, the second man on the moon, who went into depression and became an alcoholic and couldn't find his place. A friend of mine actually has another friend who used to serve in the French Foreign Legion. And he's a Hungarian, and when he came back, what I heard was that he got completely depressed. He was completely bored of everything because the threshold of sensation is very different when you are at home and nobody wants to kill you. So I think that you have to be careful with dreaming big. There's a lot of propaganda around there that says that you have to grow, you have to be big, but it's more important how you feel about it. It can destroy your life if you are not prepared to do it. And there are other things that can prevent you from feeling success. And I'm going to say 3 things that are described by psychologists. The first one is the imposter syndrome. How many of you have heard about the imposter syndrome before? Probably way more people have experienced it than have heard about it. This is when you feel that you got somewhere, but you are fake. You're a fraud. You don't know anything. And how did I get here? I must have cheated. And you feel bad about it. Surprisingly, 70% of the world's population, this is the data I found on the internet, has been affected by this syndrome. 70%. Hands up who have. Okay. Another interesting thing is that there is a belief that it affects women more than men. But there's another belief that women are just more open in talking about their emotions. And there's a good advice to overcome this. Try to realize, talk to others and try to realize that nobody really knows what they are doing. Even the serial entrepreneurs often fail. It's not a very good platform. It's like you can't have the recipe for success. There's another thing, the Jonah complex, which is the fear of success, which prevents self-actualization or the realization of one's potential. This is less common, but there are people who are simply afraid to be successful. And there's a sociological tendency. This is called the tall poppy syndrome. The tall poppy syndrome is used to describe a culture where the people who have a high status are resented, are attacked, or cut down, or criticized just because they are classified to be better than their peers. It's important to know in what environment you are operating. And when it comes to entrepreneurs, I was telling, show your people the way how to do things. But it's much easier to have the small victories when you have a career path, when you know your areas, that you need to take care of these areas. I think it's much harder for entrepreneurs to feel these. And when there is clear feedback, when there is appreciation, when there is black and white small victories, you know when to stop to take a breath, when to stop and celebrate. But many of you here are CEOs or entrepreneurs, and we tend to think that different rules apply to us. So, are we really better than the others? Are we really different from the others? There was much research into entrepreneurial dynamics. This is not an easy word. But I would only mention one large-scale experiment that happened in 1995. It's called a panel study of entrepreneurial dynamics. The researcher, Kelly Shaver, and the team has called 64,622 American households at random, trying to identify people who were recent entrepreneurs, not in the business for more than 3 months. So they have selected 800 entrepreneurs and 400 non-entrepreneurs as the control group, and they had them fill in a 15-page questionnaire. So what did they find? Well, before I tell you that, is that, do we do it for the money? What's interesting is that entrepreneurs and others seem to vary equally about the financial autonomy, and they have a feeling of being motivated in their jobs. What they found is that neither a need for financial nor personal independence seems to have caused any of these people to start their own business. So then what? I would like to stop here for a bit again. There are some people here in the audience who go somewhat against this statement. Katja Virtanen from Delingua lost her job as an interpreter at the EU due to those nasty Central and Eastern Europeans in 2004. And she was forced to start a company. This is how Delingua started. Marta Balázs from Edimart wanted to work from a home office and thus needed to create a company. Sharon Tabraham from ST Communication mentioned that she did want to be in control of her earnings and be in charge. Elena Kirsanova from Aspect simply did not want to work for the stupid boss that she had before she was younger. And we started Kilgray Not because we wanted to create a big company or a technology startup or whatever, but because we were afraid. The project itself started at our previous job, and we were afraid that the management would, at some point, stop financing this project in which we believed. We would have gladly worked for others on the same project. So what were the differences then? The first one is a bit funny. Entrepreneurs are not extreme risk takers. They are just worse at coming up with reasons why they would fail. And the second thing is that entrepreneurs don't care what other people think about them. Are we in agreement with these statements? I don't know. I, for one, do care about what other people think about me. Just want to avoid that they think I'm an everyday person. And just look at some people from the industry like Rina Neiman or Joachim Alves. They are perfect examples of walking images. But one thing is for sure, in this industry we dare to be freaks. It was about 7 or 8 years ago that I sat on a bench with Tamás Ritter, who was at that time the youngest employee of Kilgray. We were talking about big things in life, you know. He was in his early 20s, I was about 30. And all of a sudden he comes up with a question. István, why do you always hire freaks? Wouldn't it be easier just to run a company with decent, normal people who work hard during the day and disappear in the evening? And this is probably the most memorable question that I ever heard from an employee. It was just direct. It was just honest. I was 30, so I came up with a bit of a lie. I was saying like it's much easier to retain those people who are like this, but I don't think that he's watching it right now, but if he is, then I have to admit that I lied to him. And it's because I didn't have the courage to say that. It's because I am one freak and I just love to be with them. I had a conversation with Amy from Translators Without Borders, and she mentioned to me that the aid industry is a more sophisticated and competitive industry than the translation industry. I can imagine that, but I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. And like a good preacher man, what I can tell you is that it's fine not to aim for the stars. It's fine to do a lifestyle business. As long as you feel comfortable there, do whatever you feel like doing. Live your life the way you like it. If you're fed up with all of this, that's okay. Sometimes we all are. And I've seen a lot of people that were completely overwhelmed by their companies. It happens. We all experience that at times. So what do we as the language industry think about the recipe for success? I have interviewed a couple of people, about like 15, who are mostly here in the room or who left because they have a flight to catch, and came up with some insight. These are not going to be my ideas. These are going to be ideas that I heard from others. I would like to thank these people for their feedback. So, the most important thing, some people said, like I could summarize it as to have a vision. A vision that everybody knows and buys into, says Amy. A vision that you don't give up. Be steadfast, says Peter Zoricek. Strategic planning with tangible goals. Very nice management talk, Marta. But also, there are two that are very different. I asked also Claudia Mirza from Acorby and Grant Straker from Straker Translations, who are very quickly growing companies, about vision, and they were talking about very specific things. Claudia was talking about that our industry will be totally disrupted by artificial intelligence. What is the next for our industry? And Grant Straker was talking about machine learning, transform the supply chain management based on machine learning. Do we believe these visions? I think with a pinch of salt, we can. But they are impressive, aren't they? They are captivating. So ladies and gentlemen, you are in trouble now. How are you coining your vision? Who are you enabling? Do you need to differentiate, or do you just need to believe in what you are doing? Is a vision and a business model coming hand in hand? These are all quite important things. And if you get the right proportions of this or the right combination of this, you are probably going to get to the next level. So what's the second one? I was very glad to hear this. It's an open mind. And you will see the different nuances of how the different people have put it into words. Keep up to date with the industry trends and tools and keeping abreast of competition, says Sharon. Always look out for creative ideas, Katja. Pay attention and listen to people, but really listen. Demonstrate in what you do that you've heard what they tell you. This comes from Amy. Motion and experiment. It is not good to be too comfortable, comes from Malon. Open mind, willingness to develop, to learn, industry knowledge, customer-centric project management. Again, very tangible things. And I really loved Raimund's quote, what seems to be your worst client will make you stronger, and it will be your best and give you more opportunities. I experienced this at Kilgray. We had some Japanese translators, American Japanese translators living in Japan, who were not very easy to handle. I'm telling you, probably of all people, the Japanese translators from America living in Japan are the hardest to handle. They are absolutely fussy. But whenever we could grasp what they were saying, believe it or not, but our sales started rocketing. And it was not because they were facilitating the sales. It was because they made us understand problems that we, as a team of Hungarians, Germans, French, whatever, could never have understood. So this is a good recipe, I believe. And I think that you can learn everywhere. I've only been to On Global for 1 month. And it's a much smaller company, and I've thought that I have seen a lot of the technology matters in the other companies. But I can tell you that already in this 1 month, I have learned from one of our customers in Germany relating to the customer review. Like what they would like to do and how they would like to get more efficient. And it's something that you cannot do with MemoQ. So maybe that's the reason why this was outside my understanding. It just didn't fit the model that I was having. So this change also changed the model. So no matter how small is your company, you can always learn, and you can always find your niches. So the third one was management, and I'm not going to talk much about this. Great professional management team, cooperating managers, flexibility. But what I can tell you is less people mentioned the importance of management than vision and open-mindedness. And there were other factors like staff, the staff feeling good, that the staff works not for the money. In these times when we are hearing a lot about the shortage of people, I think it's probably an important thing. There's a scarcity of people in the market. But on the other hand, Grant Straker was telling me that he believes that as long as you've got the business model and you've got the innovation going, the people will come. So you can sell also on the HR part. What was interesting for me out of these things is managing the money. 2 people talked about managing the money. And what surprised me is that the 2 people who talked about managing the money, they were Amy, who works for Translators Without Borders, and Malon, who was probably the most people-focused person that I interviewed. She was all about the team. But these people who are so people-focused, they were able to capture that it's very important not to waste your money. So this was something I loved. I heard people measure success in contentment. This is what Amy was saying, and it was liberating for me. Because if you've got the recipe how to grow, then how will you feel? How should you feel? Will you be happy? If you look at the advertisements of the early 20th century, and you see all these graphical pictures of ladies, do they look happy? Happiness is overrated. It is perfectly normal not to feel happy when you are the CEO. Whenever we got a big deal, I felt the stress of delivery. I didn't feel the happiness. I felt like, oh my goodness, we will have to work so hard on this, and like, what resources am I going to pull? And I must say that one thing that I think was a mistake is that we didn't have the culture of celebration, which wouldn't only have helped the employees, but also, I guess it would have helped me as well, positively reinforcing the contentment that we had felt. So find a way to decide in the team what is important and what is not, and what you should be proud of. Besides this working for you, besides this working for your own happiness, it also helps keeping the team together. Look at these people. Coca-Cola is just not funny. I don't know, I'm looking at that bottle, but I don't find that I'm going to burst out in laughter. So it's a bit crazy, this world, isn't it? And now I'm going to talk a bit about my dilemmas in management. This is the last part of my presentation. And what I would like to say is that these dilemmas go against traditional management methods. But what you need to know is that when I started the company, together with my peers, none of us were very well skilled, very well trained managers. We have learned over time. And I think it's important to take into account that this may not apply, this challenging may not apply in an organization that is managed correctly. But when you are moving from a small organization with a lot of chaotic processes to something that is much more regulated, much more clear, then you have to take into account the change as well. And this is why I came up with this. What Amy was saying again is that the big organizations are bureaucratic and don't change easily, whereas the world is changing rapidly. I think that this is the message of 2016, that question everything and go with the change. Did you imagine that the Brexit would go through? Probably not. I was so surprised when it happened. Did you imagine that I would stop being the CEO of Kilgray? Did you imagine that Trump would win the elections in the USA? And I'm telling you, I did. So I invested in oil and gas. I got 20% very quickly. Am I proud? Absolutely not. If you look at money from an old school perspective, that is the only currency that expresses value as seen by the society, you find that we live in a stupid world. You might want to change your approach to money and simply not care about it. But at the same time, individually, you have way more chances with making money than with achieving your big dreams, your big goals. Just go with the flow. I'm an economist, and this is my #1 dilemma. The thing is that I can question a lot of things, but my belief in that money is expressing something, that's very hard to question. It's a bit like democracy. You know, what people say about democracy is that it's not the best possible form of a state, but nobody came up with a better one yet. So let me give you the account of some of those things that kept me thinking over the last couple of years. Before we go in here, I would like to tell you one thing that I hold to be true. It's that besides vision, there is culture. And the culture is formed by the owners. Of course, it's shaped by the employees as well, but it originates from the owners. If you are the, bless you. If you are the sole owner of the company, it is formed by you. If you are not, you need to invest time into making it explicit, because it's something that is very deep-rooted. It does not take a long time, though, to put it on paper. And then anybody who is questioning a cultural value can come to you and discuss it through, which value you are questioning. Do it before it's too late. I must say that one of my failures at Kilgray was that my set of values, in the end, did not completely overlap with an important part of the company, with about 1/3 of the company. It was my mistake that I went into one direction. They wanted to go into a different direction, not dramatically different, but I did not take the time to identify the root cause. And so the way I stepped down was that I talked to every single member at the management and asked them how they feel. okay, how they feel more confident about the future of the company. And this was the easiest way of healing a corporate culture that was a bit ruptured. There's a simple exercise, very simple, putting down the values. Take a number of post-it notes and write down cultural values. Adjectives, nothing else. Whatever comes to your mind. Ask other people to write them down. And then look for even more adjectives. And then you can distribute the values. You can do an auctioning for the values. The thing is, there is a bidding. You've got a certain amount of points, let's say 100, and all the owners start bidding for the values. I give 5 for honesty. I give 10 for honesty. And that's yours. Honesty is yours. 1, 2, 3. All owners bid, and not every single value needs to be taken. And this is showing, in a very nice exercise, it's showing what you are really believing in. And then just come together, discuss these values, and define them. That's also very important, because these words can mean different things for different people. And I think this is a very important thing, to have a joint understanding of what we believe in, what are the values. More important than vision, differentiation, whatever. So here are my dilemmas, and I'll try to make it quicker. Do we need professional management? In my view, management is a profession. The science of management is a set of rules proven in the past. It's a bit like the investment banking. It's, they are always telling you that, let's say, an investment fund is something that we can make certain predictions based on the past, but we cannot guarantee anything. And I feel the same way about professional managers. Can we trust the old school management in a changing world? The problem that I found with some of the professional managers is that they learn so much about these methods that they believe them to be true. And the foundations of business, or the foundations of the world, not so solid. They are not so solid. They can work out, and obviously it's very good to know these things, but I think it's worth questioning them. A professional manager can teach you some proven methods, but I don't know still if sharing a vision, having an open mind, and the willingness to change things isn't enough. Sorry, this was the marshmallow exercise. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the marshmallow exercise, which is a very basic prototyping exercise. And what was proven is that recent MBA graduates are way worse in this than kindergarten kids. The other thing is, do we need to be professional? And professional managers, especially if they come from Germany, will use the word professional with a lot of passion. From a manager's perspective, professionalism is a must. But what I'm wondering is whether it is worth that from a financial perspective to be professional in every area, or to leave some things a little bit less worked out, and identify those areas where you want to excel. This impacts your bottom line. And I'm not sure if I'm in agreement with this statement here. If you think it's expensive to hire a professional to do the job, wait until you hire an amateur. But if you want to professionalize more things, then the first thing I believe that you should start professionalizing is your finances. Learn that. It's a very important skill. The goals versus tasks. This was a very personal one for me. If you're an open-minded person, you love to learn from others. And I started learning within Kilgray from a number of people. And I was trying to copy them, but I never felt very comfortable always creating the goals. And I would say that I'm quite intuitive. I'm quite logical, but it's a background task. I'm not explicitly logical. And I don't feel very comfortable expressing everything in goals. I know what to do next. Usually that I know. And I think that many of you are like this. But is it a micromanager? I don't really know. So I thought that I needed to justify every decision. And that kept me thinking so much, and I became quite inefficient. And it slowed me down, really. It was finally a management consultant who was, after long hours, able to convince me that not every successful CEO needs to be goals-oriented. This slide I have taken from Fujitsu, which is about good managers and micromanagers. Fujitsu's revenues and profits are both down, and the profit has never exceeded 3.8% since 2010. The life cycle of people. This was a major one also at Kilgray, and this relates to change. Somebody has been working for you for a long, long time, and they are doing amazing things. It's a bit like growing apart or living in the past. They have contributed to the company. Do you want to retain them at all costs? Is it worth doing that? I think it's like, if you are not saying by gut feeling a yes, then we've got a problem. But not at all costs. That's what I think. Does this person have a place in the company when things are organized? For example, I was working with some people who were totally chaotic and just didn't fit in the more organized manner. They were amazing brains. And it's very hard to find a new place sometimes in an organization where the values, the setup is changing. Or another thing, if there is an opinion leader in the company who has been with you for a long time, they are more prone to criticize you. But if they criticize you for things that you feel that you have already overcome, then what do? I guess this happens in the Netherlands. I always thought that I would hire and train people that can go and work everywhere after leaving Kilgray, so I don't feel so bad about letting some people go. But it's unorthodox to say these days, but it's not always the best idea to stick with all team members for too long. I think that the life cycle of a person and the life cycle of a company, everything has a life cycle, and they need to match together. And then fitting into the company. This relates to the culture. I think a lot of smaller companies don't do this, and the culture can change, but at some point, it just needs to be checked. I really love King, which is a computer game developer. They do 5 interviews when they are hiring a person. And the 5 interviews all relate to their 5 values, which are fun and friendly, humble and open, fast and fluid, creative champions, and care and craft. They don't test them for any kind of activity. They test them for attitude. And I think that diversity is very good. Taking advantage of new approaches is very good. But what I can't answer is where's the limit? I think that some diversity helps, but an awful lot doesn't necessarily. And then micromanagement, employee privacy, and complete trust. Timon de Jong talked about the young generation not caring much about privacy. I'm not sure about it. They still hate it when I was peeping over their monitors all the time. And the question is, how much should you be friends with them? How much should you be mentor? What if there is not enough time? I think that if you are expressing emotions, if you are expressing things in the grand scheme, that's taking a lot of time. And the question is whether you can afford to have that. Whether if you are dealing with one person, you will just neglect another one. It's a tough one. I'm not completely sure if you have to trust always everyone what they are saying. Because people usually don't lie, that's true. That's something that I perfectly think that way. But what I think is that it often happens that they see reality differently, especially managers, from how their employees are saying realities. How can you double-check this? If anyone has an idea, I would be more than happy to listen to it. This is the getting a buy-in, where I would just give an example of what happened to me when I was 25 and I was working for the worst boss in my life, I was working in innovation. And we never talked about emotions with her. But she always expressed, when she was not agreeing with me, that ultimately it's her decision because she is the CEO and she is in control. This was driving me mad. And most of the time, what you are learning as a CEO is that you need to take decisions. But you need to take decisions that have a certain amount of buy-in. And this is something that I was not getting at that time. So in the end, I got fired. And I hated when she was talking about taking decisions because it, to me, read like power abuse. So what is the right way of doing this? How much buy-in do you have to get? And this is, again, something that... Can you still hear me? OK. Now? OK. This is something that has been on my mind for a long time, and because it's a dilemma, I can't answer that. I think that a certain amount of buy-in you must have. I think if you are have all subscribing to the same cultural values, it's easier to agree on the rules of this. But I think it's very important to make it clear how we are accepting the decisions of the managers. And finally, the differentiation. I think that this is hardest for an LSP. How do you differentiate yourself? People are saying this differentiation all the time, but it's so hard. I'm telling you because I'm seeing it now. The other thing that's very hard is that it needs to be an ongoing process. Like, you were different in something, but somebody comes and copies you, which will definitely happen. Then you need a different differentiation again. And for marketing to function, you probably need a lot of differentiation, but very often it's coming from the customers, the user. But what I can tell you is that for LSPs, I mean, these are the types of differentiation, a comparative differentiation in what am I a little bit better than the others, that's probably working easier than a holistic or a unique differentiation. I mean, when you're talking about a holistic, for example, the organization's partner ecosystem provides the differentiation by building out a complete solution. You can look at some of those content management systems that are integrated directly with some of the largest LSPs. Hello, Jeff. And that's pretty much the holistic differentiation. But I think for smaller LSPs, probably the comparative differentiation is what you need to think about. And therefore, you don't have to be completely unique. And one very liberating statement came from my microeconomics teacher back at university, was whenever he was talking about the monopoly and asked us to give an example of the monopoly, we were always saying, you know, the gas company, the electricity company, whatever. And he was saying, but when you think about the monopoly, think about the shoemaker in the village, that you wouldn't go to the next shoemaker in the other village. And I think that this is the opportunity that we have in the language service space. So these were the dilemmas that I wanted to talk about. And I would like to give you the statement that one of my teachers back at secondary school used to say. He was teaching philosophy and history. Say whatever you want to say, someone else has already said it before you. And first it looks a bit negative, but if you think about it, it's liberating. You can do whatever you want, because you're not going to be a bigger crook than anyone else before. The success comes in small installments. And great success may make you satisfied, but it doesn't make you happy. And when you are running the company, just be okay with this. It's not going to cause happiness. It's going to cause you some feeling of contentment that we talked about it. And probably a lot of people came up with the ideas before that you are coming up with, or they will come up. And just feel okay with it. After all, it's business, it's part of your life, and nothing more. Thank you very much.